How are you, man?
Exhausted in like 90% good ways.
So, hang on. Let me turn this down. Exhausted from work, exhausted from pandemic, exhausted from election, exhausted from all three.
Uh, D, all of the above. No, mainly just work has just been, and it's weird because it's nothing surprising. It's nothing that we didn't sign up for. I knew well aware that November and December are just going to be chaos, but like not like out of control. What do we do? Chaos, just a lot of things coming onto the plate at once. Chaos. So, we're prepared for it. Like we're handling it. Like everything's good, but like it's a time.
Yep. Yep. It's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody this week who knew after the fact that they were going through a growth period, but they didn't know it. They didn't know it during the growth period. And that manifests itself in different ways in different people. Sometimes it's frustration, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's just exhaustion, sometimes it's just not feeling well or getting sick or something like that. And then she came out the other side and she was like, I'm really glad I went through that. I'm really glad that I went through that growth period because I'm in a better place now. And it was amazing to see her kind of self-realization, how kind of toxic the environment was that she was in. And now she's just in a much better place. But I think, for guys like you and I think we've done a lot of soul searching over this last year to figure out and tap into and communicate about those growth periods, because those are extremely important, going through a brand pivot or a new initiative or a level of client or, all of those things. And I'm currently experiencing that right now with the stuff that I have going on that I'm not ready to announce to the world yet, very soon, but I can already feel the brand growing that next level, and it's incredible. It's humbling. It's a lot of different things, but I need to make sure that for me, how I deal, and that's not the right word, how I process going through growth is I have to stay on schedule. I have to do my routines. I have to make sure I'm walking. I have to make sure I'm eating well. I have to make sure I'm doing my stretching. Taven and I just joined the local gym last night. So that's going to be part of the new routine before, the first of the year when everybody shows up at the gym. So I think it's important it's certainly for me at least important to identify, communicate, and just get that constant weekly reminder. And that's why this show has been so good for me, is it forces me to say the things that I don't normally say from Monday at 6 a.m. to Friday at 11:59 a.m. It's just super important to identify those things.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it just comes with just wisdom and having been in the situation before. Like all of like the new projects, especially that we're taking on November, December, even a little bit of January. We're upfront with people, like straight up, like, hey, like this is gonna be a lot. Like we're gonna be stretched thin on this. That's a tight deadline. Like, don't get your hopes up for November. Like we can do our best and we can aim for November, but I'm like, I wouldn't expect anything.
Right.
And I think that it's kind of nice where you learn just to communicate that. Because I think a lot of times, especially in the agency world, where it can be very competitive, there's this default mindset of just take everything that you can,
right,
and try to find a way to make it work, and don't say no to anybody. And I think a lot of times, especially earlier on, you're hesitant to say, I don't know if we can do that for November. I don't know if that's a realistic timeline. I don't know if that's practical. But, going on, year 6 through this with us here, I'm just far more comfortable being like, hey, like, oh, it's October 26th. Like, no, like this probably isn't going to be up and running for November.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And, or like a project locally that we're working on. for a holiday thing that normally would take 6 months worth of planning that we had 6 weeks. But I just have phenomenal relationships with the guys that are in charge of it, where I'm like, look, man, we'll do the best we can on this. And I think that we can, like, and I'm not just saying that like, oh, like we're going to generate nothing. Like, I genuinely believe that like we're going to do a good job and it's going to be worthwhile, but it's not going to be our normal, like we talked about on this show, for as intentional and thoughtful as our process has become. I'm like, it's not going to be that. It's going to be figuring out Saturday's plan on Friday. You know? And with that, you sacrifice in some areas, especially in the beginning. So it's just kind of one of those things where, we've talked about it a million times, just setting expectations.
Yep.
And I knew it. I've been here for as much as I've tried to stick to my 8 p.m. rule. I've made peace with the fact that that's probably not going to exist for the rest of 2020. But like when you, like it's a term that you use all the time. Like I give myself permission to, like, I was here till like 10:30 last night, but it's like okay, like it's everything's right here. Like working a couple extra hours here and there, like it's not going to kill you. And like especially when it's stuff that you can plan for and you can account for, and then you're not staying in the office until 10:30 because you feel like you have to. You're doing it because you're like, yep, this is part of the plan. When I signed my name on that dotted line in October, I knew this is what November was going to look like. And just being able to kind of and just be like, yep, like, okay, like this is chaos, but it's controlled chaos. Like, got it. Everything's been outlined step by step. And it's weird. This is the busiest, like just, step by step we've been in a long time, but I also feel weirdly just at calm with it because everything is still, even though it's a chaotic plan, everything is still a part of the plan and everything is working. So it's a weird but fun time.
Well, I do use that term a lot, and it's a term I use in my personal life. It's a term I use in my business life all the time. It's just, it goes back to your term that you use with me all the time. Number one, you ain't such a big shit as you think you are, right? Number one, that what you and I do is not mission critical to the world. It's not. It's fun. We've created careers that give us, we've had the audacity to create careers that allow us to stand in a green bedroom and hang my golf flags and have 3 different screens going on at once and create and support my family as a lifestyle. So for me, using that term, giving yourself permission, can mean anything. It can mean working until 1:30 on your podcast in the morning, on your podcast. It can mean giving yourself permission to turn your computer off at 2:00 in the afternoon and binge watch, the entire season of House of Cards. It's give yourself permission to move yourself into a scenario where you're in a better place, whether that be physically or move your family or move your house or move your career or start a side hustle or all those things. It's okay to give yourself permission because it puts you in the mindset to say, wait a minute, if I'm not right personally, how can I be giving my family, my wife, whoever else that you're coming, my coworkers, my employees, how can I give myself my best self if I'm not concentrating on the things that I need to concentrate on? And I think that's kind of the question I had for you for this is like, we talked about this. I'm so happy we basically documented this entire pandemic, and I think really, just out of sheer dumb luck, we did it when we started on, right before Super Bowl Sunday. So I think for me, we knew this, again, I'm not getting political with anything I'm saying. We knew this second wave was coming, right? This third wave, second wave, whatever we're calling this thing. We knew that the holidays were going to be tough. Thanksgiving's going to be tough. Christmas is going to be tough. Newsflash, the election's over, right? Put on your big boy pants and big girl pants. It's over, right? So it's time to move on from that too. So my question is, collectively, yourself and your clients and stuff, where are they in terms of their headspace to say these next probably 8 to 10 weeks are going to be really, really tough on everybody, emotional, family stuff. But it seems like there's a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to vaccines and treatments and all this stuff. Where's kind of your and your clients' collective headspace, and what advice are you giving them that you didn't give back in March, April, and May?
Well, I think that everybody is, I wouldn't say everybody's in a good headspace, but I would say everybody's in a realist's headspace, in that, one of the things that we talked about on the show, if you 5-6 months ago, was that, upstate New York in a pandemic and upstate New York, mid-December to mid-February, those two worlds don't look that different. Like we joke about the weather a lot, but when you break it down, it's true. Whether it's, restaurants or, brick and mortar retail, stuff slows down, specifically after the holidays, for a number of reasons. The weather, the amount of money people just spend on gifts. So like they're kind of scaling back. So like the actual, while the reasons are obviously vastly different, the actual end result isn't that off from what it would normally be. Mm-hmm. So whether it's because of a second wave, or just the seasonality of where we live, there's really no reason to not be prepared for this, mm-hmm. and ready to innovate through it. Mm-hmm. And I think, everybody has embraced that to different levels. Some people have gone fully online with their stuff. Some people are still struggling with it. And that's just by nature how people adapt to things. Everybody adapts to change and different ways of doing business and living life differently. So, it's just one of those things, and it's a harder conversation with some than with others, but ultimately it just boils down to like, what choice do you have? Mm-hmm. I get being fatigued. I get being annoyed. I get the frustration that comes with people telling you what you can and can't do. The amount of bar owners in our state that just got told 48 hours ago, hey, 10 p.m. you're done. That's shitty, man. It really is. But, what's all our like, we're not going to lobby the governor into changing his mind on that.
Right.
So how can we change? Like, what business, and I think life comes out, what do we have control of that we can change to adapt to this? Mm-hmm. So and there's a lot of people that are probably getting sick and tired of hearing me say that, because I've been saying it for 9 months, mm-hmm. but reality is reality at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing we always say. We get repetitive. We get sick of being repetitive on this show. It's the same thing as it was 9 months ago. It's the same thing as it was in July. When we sat here in July and August and we were filming this outside because it was gorgeous out, like, we knew what was coming. It was just, it was inevitable. When it got cold, everybody was coming inside. To me, I see this as an enormous advantage. And here's why. We are probably going to be, from after Thanksgiving until probably the middle end of January, maybe even into February, we're going to be stuck inside with each other. So what I've taken great pride is working on my house. Like, that's all I've been doing. It's been finishing the basement, making sure we have more livable space in our current house, so that when we I have my office here on the 3rd floor, we have the main living room in the middle floor, then we actually have like the teenage hangout in the basement now. So like, everybody has their own space in preparedness for what's about to happen. But as it pertains to business and personal branding and things like that, we're going to have an enormous opportunity of time at home to learn a new skill, to potentially, if you want to monetize something, learn how to flip something on eBay, learn how to flip something on Facebook Marketplace, take Craigslist free stuff, put it on Facebook Marketplace, put it on your curb, sell it for $25. You do 50 of those a month. That's rent. That's the car payments. That's the cell phone bills. That's all those things. So you're going to have time to learn things to potentially do a side hustle to make up for that lost revenue, or heaven forbid if you got laid off, or heaven forbid if you have a restaurant or a bar and you're doing less of that stuff. You can learn more skills by just going to this thing and learning those skills. You can do all of that. So I see that as, yes, are we going to get pissed off at each other, at the family? Are we going to get on each other's nerves? 110%. That's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. But if you can use some of that time to sit down and learn a new skill, if you've ever wanted to, learn how to knit and sell sweaters, if you've ever want to learn how to make effective TikTok content, this guy needs to make effective TikTok content. So that now's the time to do it. And it's just, you open up YouTube, it's the greatest invention in the history of the world, YouTube. And you simply go there and say, how do I hang a light fixture? And I've had my iPad next to me for the last 6 months. How do I hang a light fixture? How do I plumb a dishwasher? How do I transform a basement? All those things. I see it, maybe it's just my optimistic outlook on things in general, but I see this as an enormous opportunity over the next 3 months.
Well, and I think that what it is like anything, it's how you look at the world. You could be glass half full, glass half empty, or you can pour your own water. And I that's how I look at a lot of this, yeah, it's really shitty. And I understand the amount of skepticism that comes with you and I talking about this, because our businesses have, in the grand scheme of things, been largely ineffective compared to how a lot of people have. But, one thing that you could look at, like all the shit you just said, 110%, but like, even like from a business owner standpoint, okay, we can't stay open past 10, or we can't be over X capacity, like whatever, like, okay, well, what can we do then? So like, while that takes away, hours of operation and potential sources of revenue, it also takes away shit that would normally be on your to-do list.
Yep.
Right? You're not worried about table linens or wait staff or training new people or any of this, right? So like, that's all opportunity. Like we said 6 months ago, let's plan to not make $1 in the dining room in 2020.
Yep.
Let's pretend that doesn't exist. But not only does that not exist, okay, now we have this new asset over here. You know what I mean? Do we put together a private party function where it's literally only 10 people at a time in 2-hour blocks?
Yep.
Do we rearrange everything where stuff is segmented into 4 separate miniature rooms or something like that? It's all how you look at that opportunity, and having some more time, if you choose to use it that way, to sit back and be like, okay, what can I do for the next 3 months? Because whether it's government enforced or not, I think that that's just going to be life.
Yep.
What can we do that's A, going to make us money there, and B, we'll have some staying power on the back end of that. So like, one thing that we're doing here, if Sarah's watching, she helped me out. I've told you, we've gotten so much heavier into our content game the last 2 months than we have in our lives. Mm-hmm. So like, I look at this place, this is one of the most inefficient uses of this area you could possibly have. It's literally creating zero value other than it looks nice. And then when people walk by, they think that we're a cool marketing agency, So like, I was looking at it, and like, we're literally bringing our back office out where Dave's sitting. You can't see because of the glare on the window. Yep. That's coming out to the middle. And then that back part of my office is straight content studio. Mm-hmm. Photos, backdrops, lighting, everything, and then even looking forward to like podcast booth. I don't know. But like, so like stuff like that, right? Which like, if I hadn't stopped and like looked at that, I would have never crossed my mind. Because you would have been like, oh, like your iPhone photos are fine, which they are. But if you can go from fine to outstanding with like 2 or 3 steps and like investing a couple $100 in equipment, that's only making you that much better on the back end. Mm-hmm. And then with us, it helps that we have these giant 14-foot windows up front. So like, we're literally a billboard for ourselves. We had 3 people. When I was shooting stuff last night, all the light rigging is up and stuff like that. And like, people walk in like, what are you doing? And I showed them, and they're like, holy shit, that's awesome. Which like seems small, but now that's 3 more people that when their aunt's friend needs a marketing agency 3 months from now, that's the first thing that's going to come to their mind, you know? And it's little stuff like that, but it's just, I think it's forcing us to trim a lot of fat, both in our personal lives, in our business, in everything. Because like one thing that pandemics bring about where every dollar matters is you see the shit you don't need really quick. That becomes as apparent as day. So I think that's the answer there is like you're seeing a bunch of you're seeing a bunch of shit you don't need that you can cut, and B, you're seeing a bunch of shit that maybe you didn't think you need but has huge value and you can unlock it with 3 or 4 quick moves.
That's a great answer. And I think for me, the first thing I thought of when you said 10 p.m. with the restaurants, and I know we talk about restaurants a lot because we love our restaurants, right? I mean, I love eating out. It's one of my favorite things to do. It goes back to my childhood. Is that was just such a special thing to go out with my grandfather. It was like an event, you know? So for me, I'm always sympathetic and empathetic to restaurants. I think when you first said 10 p.m. for the restaurants, here's the first thing I thought of. I thought of the like your hometown pizza pub. You know, like everybody has like their favorite hometown pizza pub. It's where you go after the game. You have a couple pints. You get a couple slices. It's open normally from like noon to midnight or like noon to 1 a.m. to watch the late game, things like that. The first thing I thought of was, okay, you lose 10 to 1 in the evening. What if you did 9 to noon? You opened up that new segment and it was to-go breakfast pizzas, to-go specialty handcrafted mimosas. What if it was a 4-pack of mimosas with a breakfast pizza? And wouldn't that be amazing if you actually did it that way and looked at it like that? You know, I think for me, it's just, if you just think of it that way as an opportunity to, just like you said, strip away what you did in the past, where your excesses lie, and then reinvest those into something else that mattered. You know, I think it's just a real opportunity. Yes, it's tough. Yes, you know, there is politics involved. Yes, there's government involved. All of those things are involved. I totally get it. And those are forces from the outside. But I think if you can just maneuver within the parameters that are given to you and look at things differently, like this room is a perfect example. This used to be the upstairs hangout room, like in the winter, because it was like a cozier room for you know, the living room. But now it's being used as the office. I can shut my door, I can have my phone calls, I can talk loud, I can do all the things I like to do, and I'm not bothering anybody else in the house, and I'm not at the kitchen table. Perfect example.
I think you're right. And, you know, just the way I look at it, and I fully understand that I have a somewhat oversimplified view of how I approach things, but I just don't think life is as complicated as we think. Like the way I break it down is like, you can be upset about, you know, the politics of it, or, you know, different rules or settings that are put upon you. But like what's the ROI of complaining about that?
Right.
You know, like, you know, what's the ROI of complaining about, you know, anything really? Spoiler alert, fucking zero. You know, it might be a tiny bit for your mental health just to vent every once in a while. Great. I fully embrace that. But when you really break it down, you know, complaining there's no good on the back end of it. And if you literally take every time, like it's one of those things where like if there's just a timer that started every time that you started complaining, and then at the end of the week, instead of spending 2 hours complaining about it, you spent 2 hours doing new things, what you see is life gets better. The shit that you were complaining about becomes either no longer an issue or now it's a benefit. So like, that's just kind of how I look at that. And, you know, it's easier for me to be optimistic on our clients' behalf sometimes because I don't have to go execute it for 60 hours a week like they do. So like, you got to have some empathy there.
Yep.
But like, you know, outside of the times that you just need to get it out, like what is it doing for you?
Right.
You know, so that's just kind of how, you know, we like to look at it with people like, okay, that sucks. How are we going to fix it?
Yep. Ben checking in. Wow. Great comments. Basically, He said this period is going to be difficult if you allow it to be. I won't read this whole thing, but if you want to read it, go ahead. Yeah, I agree. People on both sides are playing politics with this. We documented that. I think we documented that last week. There was no denying that both sides are playing politics. But here's my opinion on that: is if it wasn't this, they would be playing politics on whatever else was the next big thing. That's what they do. That's one of the reasons we talked about this last week. That's one of the reasons, in my opinion, if not the biggest reason why Trump won in 2016, is because he was the non-politician guy. That is why he won. So I agree with you. But like Adam's saying is if you allow yourself to go down that rabbit hole, it's kind of like I was talking to my mom this week. If you allow yourself to go down any rabbit hole for any length of time, you're simply spinning your wheels and not being productive. That is just a way. I really like that term, how you just said that. If there was an app on your phone that listened to your conversations and knew the moment that said, oh, did you see what she was wearing last week? Who does she think she is? Like the moment that starts, the moment that you could add up all that time, I guarantee you the average would be between 3 and 4 hours. I guarantee it every week of people that, if not more. So when you goes back to what you and I talk about all the time, is if you say, I don't have time to do that, all you're saying is that is not high enough on my priority list to make time for it. You cannot tell me. I haven't met one person in 3 years since doing my brand pivot of doing advising and consulting that doesn't have time if they don't have motivation to do it. So that's what it really boils down to. So yes, Ben, I do agree with you. Absolutely playing politics. I won't get into deaths and things like that. That's just not what I'm about. For me, I watch the news enough to figure out how it's going to affect my life. Then I turn it off, and then I map my actions accordingly to get to my goals. That's how I see what's happening. And that's even, guess what? Pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic, that's exactly how I'm going to continue to operate.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest way that I break it down is that, like, whether people realize it or embrace it or not, like, your time is just the most valuable asset that you have. It just is. You can't make more of it. You can't buy it from other people. You have 24 hours in one day. You have 7 days in a week. You have 365 days in a year. That's not changing for anybody.
Yep.
So, like, if people thought of that as an asset, as a resource, and they were as careful about wasting time as they are about wasting money, what a fucking world we would live in, But like that's like where I tell people, it's funny because you, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you have to think that way because you recognize it in your bottom line much faster than everybody else.
Yep.
Your amount of clients you have, amount of money you make, whatever, that is directly tied to how much value you create every day. Mm-hmm. And every minute you're wasting time, you're not creating value, you're not making money. Yep. You don't have a salary where I'm going to make the same amount this week, whether I'm productive for 12 hours, 22 hours, or 42 hours.
Yep.
Same amount, right? So that's why it's easy for a lot of people to kind of fall into it because you can afford to waste time, mm-hmm. and your bottom line isn't necessarily affected. Right. Here, complete opposite. So you start thinking that way much earlier in life, and you see it. And it's funny, you try to break it down with other people and you talk about it and they're like, it's just not that simple. And you're like, actually, yes, it is. You know what I mean? Where, like, I freak out if I'm on a call that's 8 minutes long when it should have been 4, I start to get antsy. People that want me to leave 3 hours early to go to dinner or go have some beers and watch the game. Like, I'll break it down. I'm like, imagine if you weren't salary and you got paid hourly, but literally only while you were working. When you're scrolling through Twitter, when you're watching that YouTube video, imagine you go off the clock and they stop paying you.
Yeah.
How would your life change? Uh-huh. Would you act differently? Yeah, you'd probably act a lot more like I am right now because that's how this works, And it's just one of those things where, like, complaining just becomes this just alarm that goes off because it's by definition creating no value. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping anybody else. All you're doing is wasting your time. Never mind creating like negative vibes and negative energy. That's just a whole different discussion on how that brings everything else down. But it's just true, you know? So like, especially when you're faced with the adversity of a pandemic, where your time is even more crucial, even more valuable. The thought that you're going to waste some of that, I don't know.
But let's be clear. We're not talking about working 24/7. That's not what we're saying. We're saying if you want to go binge watch House of Cards for 8 hours on a rainy Sunday, go do you, bro. Like, that's what we're saying, because that's what you need to recharge and have the mental health to be at your best come Monday morning at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever it is. That's what we're saying. What we're saying is the complaining does nothing. If you say, I want to be in shape on July 4th, you know, if you spend as much time working out or even walking or standing at your standing desk or all of these things that personally I'm trying to do, if I spent 3 hours doing those things instead of, oh man, did you see what Trump said? Oh man, did you see what Biden said? Oh man, did you see did you see, it's just, it keeps feeding and feeding and feeding, because then what you find is you're going to attract that. We talk about this all the time. You know, your vibe attracts your tribe. You're only going to find more people that are bitching and moaning about the same things, because in the short term, it makes you feel good. Because guess what? People do things in the short term and they don't do things to reinvest in the long term. They don't do it. So my mom had a question. She has said, isn't this a good time to work on your business plan? 100%, 110%. Now is the good time to work on your business plan. Or now's the time to execute on your business plan. Or now's the
good time to work.
It's a great time. Yeah, because you are investing in the long-term success of what you want to do. So instead of scrolling and finding something on Twitter to support your view, guess what? Conspiracy theories are not just on one side, they're on both sides. If you want to sit there and read conspiracy theories all day, all night until you fall asleep, guess what? There is always going to be a voice there to find it. If you want to grow your business, look at something different, try a new business or try a side hustle, guess what? You are one article. You just spent 3.5 minutes watching an article or reading an article where you could have watched a 3.5 minute YouTube video of how to make money selling things on eBay and Facebook. That is that in your mind, that is the value exchange that you just told yourself. And you gave yourself, let's pull it right back around. You gave yourself permission to go down that rabbit hole, read those conspiracy theories on both sides rather than better yourself. Period. End of story. No excuses.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it comes in. Like, I think that it's important to mention too, a lot of this, particularly for businesses during this pandemic, it is far easier said than done. I don't think it's lost on anybody. You know what I mean? To, continually have to do this for, 8 months now. That's exhausting. That takes a toll physically, mentally, emotionally. It does, 1,000%. So, it's not saying like, oh, like quit bitching and keep going, right? Like occasionally, like you have to talk about that. You have to, like, that's where venting and like shit like this show becomes so important. Just getting that out like that. I think it's important to maintain that perspective at the same time. But, it's just one of those things where I think it's heightened for a lot of people, the need to innovate, the need to try new things, the need to, create new ways to make money for yourself, for your business, for whatever.
Yep.
Because we talk about, like, this is just accelerating shit. All this move to stuff online, like a lot of this was going to happen, COVID or no COVID. So it's just one of those things where, again, the people that were trying new stuff a year and a half, 2 years ago were far more prepared to handle this adversity than people that were doing things the same way they did them in 2002. and it sounds a bit callous, but it's just true where a lot of people, I think, are kind of reaping what they sowed on a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
So you really have two options. Like, okay, like shit like this is going to happen again. Probably not on a global pandemic level, but your customer, like how many people that have a customer base that's majority, let's say 55 and older, have that customer that's just not going to come back, period. You know what I mean? Okay, fucking let's figure this out. So like, that's just one of those things where you hope and you hate to have it be something this drastic or this painful, but you would hope that this is kind of that aha moment for a lot of people where like you cannot be stubborn or romantic on how you do things.
Yep.
It's just got to be different. Yep. Like we did like a full like website content photo shoot for a client last week. I've never done that in my life. Mm-hmm. But they're like, can you do it? I'm like, I could try. And we did it, and like they're happy. I'm like, okay. Like so like just constantly thinking like all of the other shit that I've talked with you about that we haven't really put out there yet, but just thinking next steps and stuff like that. So it's just, you hope that it can be that aha moment and be more of a gateway into new profitable things more than just this roadblock that's like, that's it. The government put us out of business.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Ben says, he's seen some great ingenuity during these times. Like to note, some complain and others take advantage. 100%, dude. Seen a few in this area start up food trucks and do rather well. Others are doing jobs they never thought they would and actually enjoy it. I mean, now it's amazing to me that, I haven't done this in a long time, so I can't really relate anymore. But there used to be times where I used to get ready in the morning and get showered and put on nice pants and a button down and drive to a building so I could sit in an office, so I could close the door, so I could pick up a phone and call people. Like I used to be that guy, and I was absolutely miserable doing it. So I'm completely empathetic if you're in a position where you don't like it. But as we've seen over the last 9 months, and to Ben's point, which is a great point, you don't have to stand for that. You can start something else on the side between 8 and 1 p.m. to a.m. to side hustle yourself out of your miserable 9 to 5. You can do those things. Now, would you do it the way I did it? No, I wouldn't suggest anybody do that. But I would probably, if I had to go back and do it again, I would have started the side hustle. And then once the bench did tip enough this way, I can now go back to my wife and say, hey, I can actually support us doing this. So I agree with you. Ingenuity, entrepreneurship. I mean, it's just amazing. But now is the time to start those things, because you're not going to have anything but this pretty soon. And I'm sorry. I know that's tough. But flip open a Zoom conversation like this. I'll give you an example. We usually go to Connecticut for Thanksgiving. It's one of the things I've done since I was my kid's age. And now it's become a new tradition, one of the new generation of families. So I was thinking about it this week. I'm like, man, I was talking to the kids. I'm like, what are you going to miss most about Connecticut? And they said, oh, playing games with our cousins, like board games or something on the Friday after Thanksgiving. I said, wait a minute, we have technology. Why don't we just get on a Zoom call? We'll play virtual Yahtzee. We'll play virtual bingo, whatever it is, and we'll be able to see each other. It's those kind of things that you need to think outside the box. Meanwhile, taking advantage of all of the things that we do have at our if you've never been on LinkedIn and you want to grow your business, guess what? Go to YouTube and say, how do I put together a great LinkedIn profile? Literally as we were talking, I have my second screen open over here. I just got a text while LinkedIn's on my mind. I just got a text. Hi, my name's Jake. I'm originally based in Colorado. Came across your LinkedIn profile. Sounds like an incredible story. I want to get a similar RTD product off the ground. Would love to pick your brain. Like it's right. Like that's business right there, just from putting together a well-polished LinkedIn profile. And I didn't know how to do it well. So I went to YouTube, followed some people that I liked and I admired, and put together a similar LinkedIn profile.
Also, let's be candid on the subject of side hustles. everybody that's quote unquote working from home, i.e. being on your Zoom calls when you have meetings and then otherwise sitting there watching Netflix or doing whatever. Not that I would ever advocate building your side hustle on somebody else's dime, but there's an ROI of watching The Office for the 37th time, and then there's an ROI for doing all the shit that you're talking about. I'm not big on telling people what to do, but it's not hard to figure out which one's actually going to be more valuable for you.
It's just amazing. It's amazing. All right, last call. Let's do this last call for live questions on Facebook. I don't know if you're on Instagram or not, but maybe you are. Ben also says, Ben, thanks for the comments today, bro. Appreciate it. Another guy, good friend.
MVP this week.
He is. Works at a tire company. Built a brick oven in his backyard and now sells pizzas for, I think he meant drive-through or for through Sunday and the holidays, and sells out every single night. It's I'm gonna steal Adam's term. What a time to be alive. I mean, what a time that you can literally make money. I'm not saying this is easy. None of this is easy that we're talking about. That's why Adam and I are so passionate about doing this show and giving one person value on this. There's never been a better time than making money doing anything you want in the world. If you want to talk about 1987 baseball cards and do a podcast about 1987 baseball cards and write blogs and articles, I guarantee you there is an audience for that. I guarantee you that there is. It's just about identifying what your passion is, finding out where other people that have the same passion, where their eyeballs are, and producing content on the platforms where they already are. You don't have to be the first one to plow the road. You just need to navigate to figure out where people already are, where those roads have already been plowed, and just keep staying on it every single week. You and I started this by flipping open a camera 36 weeks ago. And all of a sudden you blink. It's like I texted my buddy Josh, who's helping us with this podcast. He goes, yeah, call me when you have some content. I'm like, bro, we have 35 episodes now. He's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, guess what? It's going to be 200. We're going to blink and it's going to be 235 episodes. I mean, just think, and then we're going to be able to go back and watch 2, 3, 4, and 5 in year 2024. We're going to be on episode 235. We're going to look back and be like, hey, remember when we started a podcast during a pandemic? Remember when we documented a podcast and helping people what to do? It's going to be so much fun.
And it's all assets. It's not like you do it for this hour on Friday afternoons and then that's it. It's over. We repurpose it on 3 different platforms. And then, that lives forever. So whatever you want to do, there's a resource for that. And it's just one of those things, like, it's just like more and more people see it every day, but it's just going to be a matter of like, you are going to get out what you put in. Pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic. You're going to get out what you put in.
Yep.
Everything. Like one of the reasons, like, it's funny, a lot of people, because we have fun here, if you can't tell, as you know. A lot of people see what we do every day and they're like, Jesus Christ, how do you have people pay you to do this? You guys are so lucky. You get to play basketball in your office every day.
Oh.
And that's your life? Yeah. And I'm like, that seems lucky on 4:15 on Friday when we're having end of week beers here, finishing up our week. Like, is that lucky at 10:17 p.m. on Thursday when we're here reshooting stuff for that photo shoot? So like, you get out what you put in. Mm-hmm. And to your credit, like 100%, whether it's a side hustle, whether it's just furthering your own career in your 9 to 5, yep, whether it's building a business, whether it's whatever, in 2020, 2021, 2022, if you have a mix of talent and you work at it, you can just literally do whatever you want. Like, it's just that easy. And it sounds super fortune cookie wisdom, pie in the sky after school special, but it's just true. A lot of the shit me and you are working on, people see that. It doesn't seem real to them, but it is. Like, we had a new client or a new prospect coming here last week asking about some of that stuff. And I'm like, some of it's almost so fun, it doesn't seem like real life. And he goes to me, he's like, did the check clear yet? And I'm like, actually, yeah. He's like, well, it seems pretty fucking real to me. That's what I'm saying.
My kids get merch. it's.
I still got to figure out who little Mosey is.
We got to get you on Spotify Premium. I got to send you some links.
Maybe that's what I'll have Alexa play this afternoon.
I'll send you Spotify links if you teach me TikTok.
Fair.
Deal. Well, that is it. It is 1:00. We gotta move on. Thank you, everybody. Ben's the MVP this week. You're the man. Thanks for checking us out, everybody. Brian, Josh, Debbie, Lauren, Pam. Thank you, Kristen, Buddy Joe, Rob, Matt, everybody for checking in today. We just appreciate it, man. And that's the bottom line for me. I'll finish on this thought is there is a lot of garbage going on right now. But if you get sucked in to your own narrative, it is at the detriment of growth of what you want to accomplish. That's really what it boils down to for me. So if you are happy in finding your private Facebook page of people that want to complain that the garbage wasn't picked up at 2:00 instead of 4:00 or instead of noon on Tuesdays, that's fine. You live your life. Adam and I are not going to care about that. But if you want to grow your current 9-to-5 business, your side hustle, or eventually replace it to become your main hustle so that it makes you happier and healthier moving forward, there's never been a better time than today. Just like in March, when we used to say back then, there's never been a better time to start. Because if you started in March, you now will have had 8 months that you've been doing that thing, and you are 8 months closer to where you want to be. That's why it's the same concept for us all the time. Adam and I are good at 5 things in this world. That's it. We're only good at 5 things. The rest of it, we suck at. We are not very good at. But at least we have the self-awareness, and this is why we implore this all the time. Deploy self-awareness to figure out what you're good at and what you want to do, and just keep doing it over and over and over. Okay. End of rant.
Not have said it better myself.
There you go. Well, thank you. If you're watching live on Facebook, we appreciate you because we understand that time is the most valuable asset. And even if you spent 5 seconds with us, or if you spent 48 minutes with us, we appreciate it. So if you're watching it on YouTube, thank you. If you are on iTunes or Spotify, we always appreciate you. You know how to reach us. Peace out, everybody.
See ya.